there. Today we want to talk about the 5 things you must discuss when you're being laid off. So this is a continuation of where we spoke recently about what to do if you think you might get laid off. This is what you're going to do in that moment.
Yes. And let's just put it out there. Layoffs are hard. They're hard for you, but they're also hard for the people that are having to do the layoffs. They may be in a position where they don't want to do this. This is not something that they want to do.
Yeah.
And,
it's usually not fun.
No.
Right. They're even harder nowadays because they're cutting deeper into the organizations, and for legal reasons, they're executed kind of abruptly and very impersonally. That's kind of the hardest part to embrace, because often your layoff will take place as you walk in the door and you're escorted into a conference room with an HR person or a legal person there and a bunch of boxes containing all of your valuables. It can feel like almost like an assault.
Yeah. And we are emotional beings, and it's something that they're by design trying to make not emotional. And, it is. There are some elements to it. And there's some elements in this process that really can ultimately work for you. So you won't know if you're going to face the layoff, right? You're not going to be,
you don't usually get a memo.
Rumblings or,
but you never know if it's going to be you. And then this is kind of by design, because legal teams are concerned, and probably with good reason, that if you are notified ahead of time that you'll steal digital assets, that you'll steal intellectual property, that you might take client lists with you. And, 20 years ago, it wasn't so easy to do that, but now everything can be done very quickly with a quick download. Right. So it's to protect the company's assets. But what it really does is leave that individual feeling really violated in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Right.
But it is critical to hold yourself together in that moment, because there are 5 things that you really should be asking for, right? At that jump. So if you can be prepared ahead of time with an understanding of what you need to be asking for. So taking that emotional aspect out of it just for a minute so that you can set yourself up for success moving forward, that is going to be your best game plan.
And that's really the point. So because it's such an emotional moment, if you can be prepared ahead of time, then the emotion's not going to get in the way. Yeah. So the first thing you should ask for is a copy of your employment contract. Right. Now, ideally you have it. Yeah. And you've already consulted it. But sometimes you haven't. You want to make sure that you understand the terms of your employment. One of the things you want to be looking for in particular are, do I have any agreements that limit my ability to go out and do business? So if I have any kind of non-compete clause, how long does it last? Is that non-compete clause only if I leave the company, or is it if I'm laid off? And really understanding that. The second thing is, and you're not going to feel like asking for this, but this is the moment to ask for it, is a glowing recommendation. Ideally, a glowing recommendation on LinkedIn. If the person who's letting you go is not on LinkedIn, which would be unusual, but in some professions is not that commonly used, then a written recommendation that you can at least stick in your portfolio and have.
Right. And asking for it in that moment, especially because this is something, again, we're all humans. This is, although we want to make it as clean and, I don't know, sterile as we possibly can, we are all humans. And so oftentimes people will say that yes, just because
in that moment they're feeling guilty. They're mostly it's the guilt. So it's also a very professional way for you to handle it. I'm very upset about this. I'm really sorry about this. I feel like I've had a really good career. We've had a good working relationship. But in this moment, I need to get myself back together. I'm going to have to go out and look for another job. And I'd like to ask that you write me a good recommendation. And feel free, we've talked about this in other episodes, feel free to give specific instructions on what you want that person to highlight in that review, what skills and experiences and accomplishments you want highlighted.
So let's talk about permission, like what you want or need to ask permission
Really
for.
Important thing here is permission to keep your employment dates open. So let's say you get laid off in June, and it takes 3 to 6 months to get a job, depending on the market circumstances. Right now, it'd probably be a little bit longer, and your level. Exactly. So asking just to keep that part of your resume open. So for example, if you started in 2018 and your resume now says 2018 to present, to ask permission, just keep it like that. Pick the time, at least 3 months, right? Maybe to the end of the year. Again, because of what you said earlier, that they're feeling a little guilty. they're very likely to be okay with that.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Which is a great ask, because then it gives you a little more leeway. Generally speaking, companies and hiring managers would rather hire someone who's already employed than somebody who's been unemployed.
Yeah.
Right.
And this also speaks to this opportunity to talk about their personal referrals.
Right. Exactly. Right? So asking that person who's laying you off would be personal referrals to other leaders in the organization who might need help. So if you're in a big organization, asking your manager, look, I've done good work for you. Can you think of other departments that aren't being affected? Or if you've done your homework, maybe know which departments are being affected. And can you walk me down the hall or make a personal introduction to me? Yes. So, I mean, my sister went through this. She left a big company. Her department was laid off, and she had abundant offers very quickly in other departments. But it helped that her manager was able to help direct her towards those.
Yeah. And so then outside of maybe that company or organization, number 5 would be asking for access to the person who.
Yeah, the person who's firing you, to your hiring manager or the HR director.
Personal.
Right. Remember that the network that your manager that you have is not limited to where you work. So if you're being laid off, it might be a really good time to jump ship. Yeah, maybe you could get a job in another department, but there's a likelihood if things aren't going well that a department may be affected shortly anyway. So also asking for your manager or your HR representative to metaphorically open up their contact book or their connection book and say, here are some people I can talk to. So again, part of the prep, if you see these things coming, start thinking about, what companies might interest me? Who does my manager know that I might want to meet? And the thing is, you're not going to think of these 5 things when you're there. You're going to be really shocked.
Yes.
Hurt probably. So having this kind of mindset of these things laid out. Another thing that can help is maybe in that moment your manager's not ready,
right?
Because they don't have access to, they don't have time.
Or maybe they're just giving you sure, of course I will.
Right. The kind of blow off.
Yeah.
So another thing to walk away with would be a scheduled meeting with your manager, so you can dig more deeply into his or her contacts, opportunities within and outside of the organization. I think it's also just a nice thing to do to kind of level set things, because in that moment, in that conference room with all the boxes of your belongings and the legal or HR representative standing over you, and you literally being escorted out the door, you're not feeling very powerful. No. Meeting your manager some way within the first couple of weeks outside of the office in a more friendly, relaxed setting is a much better place to have these conversations. Yes. And if your manager's a good one, even if maybe you didn't perform your best for that manager, or maybe there was some type of disconnect and you weren't in a great working relationship, if they're a good manager, they're going to want to help you. And that help may be saying, you know what, Susan, this is not the right field for you. You were really great in sales, but you're not a good analyst. And my recommendation is that as you start looking more back in sales, as an example. Yeah. So a really good way to kind of level set that relationship too.
I want to say something about these 5 questions and really, or these 5 things that you can do. The whole entire laying off process, when that energy is in your space, right? In your workspace, fear is running you and you can feel really helpless. And so being able to actively do something is going to bring your anxiety down. These are all things that you can just even think through, like, how might I say that? Script it out a little bit. Just give yourself something that you're actively doing to prepare yourself in case this comes your way. And that will, in and of itself, bring your anxiety level down, because you have a plan. You have something that you're going to do. Because oftentimes when that's happening, it just feels like the unknown and you have no control over it. And this gives you the opportunity to take some control back.
But I actually want to say one more thing you made me think of. In terms of scripting or having it prepared, I would put it on your phone.
Yeah.
Or if you carry a purse or a wallet, put it in there so it's always on your person.
That's a great
idea. So that when that meeting starts, you can say, hang on a second, you know what? I would like to just consult my notes because I see what's happening and I wanted to be prepared for this. I want to make sure I cover everything that I need to.
Right. So in some instances, you might need to challenge what is happening.
You might challenge it based on your performance. You might challenge the fact that you're not being offered another job. So very often if you're laid off, you're offered another job. It may not be a great job. But so yes, you should be prepared with language to challenge it based on your performance, which is why it's helpful to have that number one step ahead of time, that employment contract and maybe your last couple of reviews. You may challenge it legally. Right. If you're part of a protected class, if you're older, if other things that may contribute.
Discrimination.
If you feel like there's some discrimination there, you may challenge it legally, but you should know that in most cases, those layoffs are legal and well conceived, vetted by legal and by HR, and you're probably going to have to go along with it. And in many cases, as we said earlier, the manager wishes they didn't have to do it. Often it's a directive from above. Right.
Yeah. And taking the opportunity to recognize that you are both humans in a room doing something that feels extremely awkward, but you are going to have your own back.
That's right.
And you're going to be prepared and capitalize on the fact that this other human sitting across from you might really want to help you. The opportunity to help
and
you.
The key here is to be prepared so you can ask for that help now.
Yes.
Get that reference or recommendation or reference letter now, get as many contacts as you can now, because 2 weeks after you're gone, it's just not going to happen. I mean, you may not even hear from them again. So being prepared in that moment is so key.
Yes. So there you have it, the 5 things you must discuss when you're being laid off.
If you liked what you heard today, you can visit us at www.preparetolaunchu.com.
Thanks.